And welcome back to another episode of Steve's Monumental Adventure. We're on Series 3, Episode 52, and we are visiting Merseyside, and we're going to take a look at the Birkenhead Priory. Let's get into the video. Well, we're now down the sort of bottom end of Birkenhead now. We're making our way down, and just over here is a little priory. Now, it might be closed now because time is getting on a bit, right? And we might be a little bit late on it. But as I switch you around, okay, you can see, okay, it looks like it's closed. Padlock is on it. Padlock's on it. And it says 1 till 5, Wednesday to Friday. So what is it today? It's Tuesday. So it's the only day it's not actually even open. Can you believe that? That's typical, isn't it? Welcome to Birkenhead Priory. Did you know that this is the oldest standing building in Merseyside? And the reason being, it was founded in 1150 by Hammond de Mersey. Now a Grade 1 listed building with its 12th century chapter house and its Grade 2 listed St Mary's Tower. The custodians of Birkenhead Priory now take up the story.
Hello everyone, my name's Samantha. And we're now standing facing the Western Range. So this would be the front entrance to the Birkenhead Priory. This would be the entrance by which visitors would arrive, the monks arrived. And the building you can see in front of us is the Western Range. And directly next to it is the undercroft on the ground floor. And above the refectory, the monks' refectory where they used to eat. An award-winning roof was installed into the monks' refectory in 1996. Which enabled us to use it for events and recitals and plays and markets, all sorts of wonderful events. So that room can now be used. But the monks would have eaten in silence up in the monks' refectory twice a day. Now what I'm going to do now is take you into the Western Range. So do excuse the noise, we're very close to Camel Edge shipyards. And there's a ship being repaired at the moment in Dry Dock 5. It's absolutely fascinating to watch. So here we are at the entrance into the Western Range. Okay. So this area you can see before you is the Great Hall. It would have been an absolutely impressive room, I'm sure. There was a single floor on this section of it, and in the far distance there you can see the monk's parlour and the prior's lodgings above. They would have had 2 floors over at the far end there. So the Great Hall was used for visitors and ferry passengers who would be put up here, accommodated and fed and looked after for no charge for the first 200 years, from 1150 right through to about 1330. So they would gather around the fireplace here, which I'm sure was very welcome to them on the cold evenings. And these beautiful windows would have been boarded up at night or in colder periods, or with cloth. They would have been covered because it would have been a very cold room otherwise. So if you came along and you wanted to use the ferry, from 1150 to 1330, this was a free passage. So the monks rowed over the River Mersey twice a day, often a perilous journey due to the currents and the tides. It could often take up to 90 minutes to get across the River Mersey. It was a greater body of water then, but that gives you just some idea of how much of an undertaking it was. So you would come here, you would ask to be taken across on the ferry, and if the weather was too inclement that day, or you'd missed a passage, you would be put up here on the floor. They would give you a mat to sleep on, and they would feed you from the kitchens behind us and look after you. And this was all classed as helping a pilgrim. You were a traveller, therefore you were a pilgrim. And under the Benedictine order, that meant that you had to be looked after for free. So in 1536, the priory sadly closed, but from 1330, a charter was passed by King Edward II to allow the monks to charge for a ferry service, as they were becoming quite financially, well, they were struggling financially. So from 1330 onwards, you paid for your ferry service, and it was the first regulated ferry across the Mersey. So that in itself is quite an important piece of history. So I'll walk across the Great Hall now and take you towards the other section of the Western Range, which was the monk's parlour. Now on the ground floor here would have been the monk's parlour. That would be their window, with their window seat straight ahead of us, and directly next to it we have a squint window, or a leper's window as they were often called. Now a squint window had many purposes, so it's quite a curiosity that it's here. As you can see, it's on a diagonal angle, so that if arrows were shot or weapons, they would have a much more difficult time to reach a target. But also they were created in priories and churches to enable women or people who weren't usually allowed to watch a church service to watch whilst being hidden. Or maybe the monks could look out without anyone seeing them looking, so they had some privacy there and some protection. It's quite a curiosity, this squint window being here in the monk's parlour. The Western Range was built, we believe, in the early 1200s, several decades after the chapter house and many of the other buildings on the Priory site. It's quite a grand area and would have been very impressive in its time. Directly above the monk's parlour would have been the prior's lodgings. So we can see the prior's fireplace there, and his grand window to the skies. And then that little doorway there was his private entrance to the church that was on the site. There was a very grand church on this site, but unfortunately, due to the dissolution of the monasteries and over the centuries of neglect, and it was just left to go to rack and ruin, and finally it no longer exists. We only have the 2 corner pieces left of that church. But we have some very grand drawings, so we do know just how impressive it was, a building. So I'll move very slowly around the Western Range for you. just so she can get a glimpse and a sense of how beautiful it is. The ground would have been several feet lower than this, 1 or 2 feet lower, which would make more sense of these beautiful windows. The chapter house was built in 1150 and is the oldest standing building on Merseyside. It's currently used as a church under the Diocese of Chester for weddings and services, and we have carol services and other services here. It's a beautiful, beautiful church. I thought that this would be the best place for me to begin with a short story of how the Priory actually began, why it came to be and why it was located here on Birkenhead. So in 1150, Baron Hammond de Massey III of Dunham Massey and Sorgel Massey, it's the same family. His family home, his mansion, was at Dunham Massey, although nothing remains of that now. He had reached the grand age of 51, which in 1150 was a good age, and he was becoming concerned about his mortality, as he'd been a man of war all his life and he wasn't sure about where he was going to go in the afterlife. So as many rich men and powerful men did at that time, he decided to have a priory built. This was a Benedictine priory, so the monks wore black robes and were called the Black Monks. So Hammond de Massey had been granted extensive lands all around the Wirral area from William the Conqueror. He was one of William the Conqueror's men. So he decided that a good place for the priory would be here on the riverside at Birkenhead Priory. Now, the rivers was an important factor in this decision, because a part of the Benedictine order is that travellers are pilgrims. So it was deemed that a ferry passage could be offered by these monks at Birkenhead Priory, and that would be a credible role here in this area, which it did indeed come to be. So the monks arrive in 1150 and building begins, and each morning within this chapter house they would meet with the prior and stand in a circle facing each other and plan their day. They would dole out rewards and punishments and welcome new novices into the priory. So it was an important meeting to be had each day. It was a way of meeting each other also. The Benedictine order were a silent order, so they were only allowed to speak when giving instructions and when absolutely necessary. So it was an important part of the day, I'm sure, to many of them. I'm just allowing you a glimpse of our beautiful stained glass windows. These windows were installed in 1996. That's the calming of the storm. That's an intact Norman window, which in itself is a rarity. And that's the calming of the storm, which reflects the most spectacular light. It's absolutely beautiful. Often it reflects the entire scene of the window onto the opposing wall, which looks stunning in the morning when you come in. And that's a Sir John Ninian compa window, which my colleague Caroline will be telling you all about. And this is the Adoration of the Magi. This window was taken from St Mary's Church next door when it was demolished in the 1970s. And we believe it's a Victorian window, but there's a bit of a mystery attached to this window, as it does seem older and the scene depicted is not Victorian. A lot of elements in there which would not have been Victorian. So if anybody has any information, we've asked. It's absolutely a wonderful, magical window, and the mystery only adds to its charm. I'll move around the chapter house for you. So Birkenhead Priory existed from 1150 right through to 1536. When it was unfortunately closed as a result of the dissolution of the monasteries. And the ferry service ran for nearly 400 years, and they worked and served this community during that time. And this room below, the undercroft, was used for storage. It's always very cool in here, which I'm sure was ideal to store meat, farm animals and tools in this space. Extensive restoration has been done here over the last few decades and has made it accessible to all. It's a beautiful room with the arched. So here we are, I'll just move around the room for you. So we believe this room was built around the 1200s, early maybe 1220s, and currently it's being used as a museum. So this is the Priory Museum, and there's a lot of artefacts and information regarding the ferry service that the monks ran from 1150 to 1536, and lots of other finds that stonemasons and restoration workers and staff over the decades have found on this site. So it's a fascinating room. To our left here we also have a slab. It's a Triassic sandstone, and it bears the footprints of a Chirotherium dinosaur. And a Chirotherium, the name literally means hand beast, and it was roaming around the Wirral area 243 million years ago. So we have lots of very excited children who visit and are very surprised to find dinosaur footprints in our priory, but it's just another aspect of Wirral history, isn't it? It's just, you know, an earlier part of our history. So I'll walk around the undercroft for you so you can gain an impression of this beautiful room. So those medieval stairs you can see there, those steps, they lead up to the undercroft, and they are the original steps. And as you can see, they're uneven. And there was always a reason behind that. It was almost a part of your defence in your home. You know, if you were being chased up those steps, you know your own steps best. So you would have the advantage over an assailant who maybe has more chance of slipping or tripping. Also, a spiral staircase was a safer place to run to if anyone was about to attack you, as you couldn't draw a weapon or a sword within a spiral staircase, apart from the fact that it saved space. So a lot of medieval buildings have spiral staircases. I'll give you a last glimpse of our undercroft.
I really do hope you're enjoying the Monumental series. Don't worry, there's still lots more to come. Now, in the meantime, why don't you like and subscribe to the videos? You'll get updates on whenever a new video is out. The great thing about having a drone is that you can go anywhere. So even though it's closed, we can still have a flyover. And luckily we had a little glimpse of that ship that's in there, in dock. Well, there's a few of them, wasn't there? But yeah, so just whipped it up over the wall. You know what it's like, the drone can go anywhere, can't it? Well, that's the Priory sorted out. Well, you know, we didn't have a look inside, but we got some drone footage, and there's a few other bits we saw as well, such as those ships. So it's all good as far as I'm concerned. But now the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to go towards Tranmere now, and we're going to actually look at the Tranmere. It's like an oil jetty. It's quite a unique piece apparently. So we'll head over that way, and see what's what. Okay, so it's only about 5 minutes away. Let's go.